In this video we will deal with corporate governance, and in particular we're going to look at agency theory, as indeed the slide in front of you will suggest. Anyway, we want to look at corporate governance to see what are the issues surrounding the accurate reporting of profitability within the organization, and the steps that can be taken to ensure that there is no underhanded methods being used by agents within the organization, by managers in particular, to extract some of the surplus, some of the profits of the organization for their own purpose, and thereby take them away from the owners of the organization, who are in fact the shareholders. So this issue is tied up with what we call the principal agent problem, and let's look at this in more detail. Well, the issue was first brought to the notice of the academic world in a paper by Berlin-Means in 1932. Corporate governance has focused upon the separation of ownership from control. And if we think of most large corporations, most large businesses, there tends to be a group of investors, shareholders, on the one side, and managers on the other side. And in a sense, they're in conflict. We don't often use this language in this context, but in a sense they are, because the managers want a good life. They want job security, they want high salaries, they want perks, they want company cars and perhaps holidays and business trips, and so the managers have an agenda for themselves. But of course, the more elaborate that agenda is, that set of requirements are, the more elaborate that is, the less will be available to go to the owners of the business. And the shareholders, from their perspective, invested in the business so as to get a high rate of return on their investment. They invested in the business so as to have security of investment and earn profits. So there is a conflict between the two. And this is what we mean by the separation of ownership from control. It results in what's known as the principal agent problem, arising from the dispersed ownership of the modern corporation. Generally speaking, large companies have many shareholders, and they're very separated out. They're very dispersed. They don't often come together, and they don't speak with one voice. So the shareholders tend to be quite weak because there are so many of them, generally speaking, and they tend to not have a unified voice. They saw, Berlin-Means, they saw the corporate governance as facilitated by a board of directors who monitor the organization to minimize problems caused by the principal-agent relationship. The principal-agent relationship, I should say, by the way, the principals here would be the shareholders. They're the principals. They own the business. But they're very weak because there are so many of them, perhaps, and they're so separated and not in contact with each other, and so they're quite weak. But they are the owners. They are the principals. The agents are the managers. Now, the board of directors, well, the board of directors is a way of trying to get over this problem. So the board of directors are appointed to monitor the business, to monitor the processes within the business and the accounts of the business, to ensure that there is efficiency within the business, and also there is accuracy in the reporting of the performance of the business, so that the shareholders have an open and honest picture of how the business is doing. In this context, agents are the managers, as I just said, and principals are the owners, and the board of directors are the monitoring facility. The board of directors are in between. The board of directors monitor the managers to ensure, as I said, there's openness and honesty in reporting and in their dealings with the company. They're not abusing the company. That's the function of the board of directors, is to ensure that the managers are being open and honest, and they are reporting this back to the shareholders. Generally, corporate governance relies on two factors in agency theory. Corporations are reduced to two participants, managers and shareholders, whose interests are assumed to be both clear and consistent. So in this view, we have just two participants. We have the shareholders on the one side and the managers on the other side. And both groups know what they want. They have clear and consistent views of their requirements. The managers want security of employment, but they also want high salaries, bonuses, they want perks, company cars, and so on. The shareholders have also got very clear views. They want security of investment and they want a high rate of return. The second assumption here is that corporate governance relies on the fact that humans are self-interested. The managers are looking after themselves. They're not looking after the shareholders. They are perhaps generating sufficient profits to ensure that the share price does not fall. But that's self-interest, because if the share price falls, the company may be taken over by some aggressive competitor, and the management may lose their jobs. So the management will try to ensure that the share price is maintained so as to remove the possibility of a takeover of the business, which may cost them, as I said, their positions. So both sides, both management and shareholder, are self-interested. They're looking after themselves, and they're just the two participants. Now, seminal papers describe the firm as a hub of contracts amongst individual factors of production, resulting in the emergence of the agency theory. So we could start to see the organization as made up from different factions or different groupings, and they are contracting with each other. So the managers, the senior management will have to, in a sense, buy off the middle management, who will have to buy off the junior management, and so on. So there's a cascading set of contracts within the organization. But all of these contracts are detracting from the amount that's available to pay the shareholders. So the principal agent issue is very complex. Within a company, the conflicting objectives of individuals, including suppliers, customers, and creditors, are brought into equilibrium within a framework of contractual relationships. So all of these various objectives, all of these different participants, the creditors, the customers, the suppliers, all of these various groupings have to be, in a sense, reconciled. They have to be bought over. So they have to be facilitated. And the managers will also need, as I said, their return over and above their salaries, over and above their remuneration. So what looks like from the outside organizations, large companies who are consistent and logical and unified, in fact could be a source of turmoil and conflict, and that the image that we get by looking from the outside simply is a false image. The shareholders may not be happy with the management itself may be unhappy with different parts of the management, different parts of the management may be upset with the suppliers. It can cascade right throughout the organization. The intention of the contracts is that all of the parties acting in their self-interest are motivated to maximize the value of the organization. So that's what it's aimed at doing. The contracts that could be drawn should be aimed at maximizing the value of the organization. Of course, different participants in different groups, different sets of agents will have their own agendas as to what they want out of it, and they will negotiate to try and get what they're looking for. But there should be an effort to reduce agency costs. Now, agency costs are the problems that the management have got in the shareholders have got in trying to control the management. They have to monitor the management. That's a cost. They may have to have penalties, punitive action if the managers behave badly. It's all cost. It may lead to redundancies and legal issues because contracts are involved. And these are all agency costs that need to be taken into account. Adopting accounting methods that most efficiently reflect their own performance. And that is one of the big problems, that the accountancy methods that will be employed will make that particular group, let's say a group of agents, look more efficient and more committed to the organization than perhaps they really are. So there needs to be consistency in the accountancy and the auditing process to ensure that all the parts of the organization report accurately and openly and fairly what is happening within their particular sections. The agency role of the directors refers to the governance function of the board of directors in serving the shareholders by ratifying the decisions made by the managers and monitoring the implementations of those decisions. So the board of directors, in a sense, are working for the shareholders, but they have to work with the management, so the management bring proposals to them and they ratify those proposals, but also try to ensure that the outcomes from those proposals are consistent with their obligations to the shareholders in terms of accurately reporting profitability and accurately reporting the performance of the organization. So the board of directors are truly caught in the middle between the two groups. They have to report to the shareholders, but at the same time they must ensure the business continues. So they will look at proposals from management. If the proposals are deemed to be good, they will approve them, and so the business continues. According to this perspective, the agents of the agency theory, the primary responsibility of the board of directors is towards the shareholders to ensure maximization of shareholder value. So the board of directors is really trying to ensure that the shareholders get a good return and that their investment is secure. On the other hand, as I said, they have to ensure that the business runs. So management will take proposals to them, and in order to maintain the business, ensure that the business develops and grows and prospers, they may have to ratify those proposals from management. So it's sorting out what is acceptable to ratify and what is not acceptable. But there again, of course, that will lead to tensions and disputes and agency costs that need to be looked into. The separation of ownership from management can lead to managers of firms taking action that may not maximize shareholder wealth due to their firm-specific knowledge and expertise, which would benefit them and not the owners. And that is the problem. The management know the business. They know the product, they know the market, they know the processes within the business. They have expert knowledge. And it's difficult for the shareholders who do not possess that knowledge to fight with the managers to secure their own position. Hence, monitoring mechanisms or mechanism is designed to protect the shareholder interest. So the shareholders are not just separated out as a group, very diverse and very separated, perhaps geographically separated. It's not just that, but they also lack the expertise of running the business, so they can't effectively fight the management. So the monitoring mechanism that's put in place is the board of directors, who should try to accommodate the needs of the shareholders, but at the same time ensure the continuance of the business. So they have a balancing act to achieve. This emphasizes, I should say, the role of accounting in reducing the agency costs in an organization, effectively through written contracts tied to the accounting system as a crucial component of corporate governance structures. So the agency cost, reducing the agency costs, reduce the cost of monitoring the management and dealing with issues and disputes and stopping abuse on the part of management in terms of the resources they're taking out of the business. So trying to get the shareholders a greater return. In trying to do that, they have to monitor in detail the accounts, and in order to improve the efficiency of that process, they may come up with contracts with the management. And the contracts recognise that the management have expert knowledge and that the management are important and have got power, and therefore their remuneration may be higher than perhaps was originally anticipated or negotiated. So the management may have a certain negotiated set of terms, say remuneration and conditions of employment, but they may additionally receive bonuses to, in a sense, buy them off. And the board of directors may approve those bonuses. So this may become institutionalized. It may become part of the accounting system. And we see this in many reports from large companies at the end of their reporting cycle, that the chief executive of the business was given a bonus of so much, or the board of directors awarded bonuses to senior management or whatever. And effectively what they've done is they have a second layer of contracts which recognize that the management have got power and will take part of the surplus of the business. It will not all be paid in the form of profits to the shareholders, to the owners of the business. Some will be paid to the operators within the business, will be paid to the management. If management is rewarded for performance through accounting profits, they will attempt to increase profits, which will lead to an increase in bonus or remuneration through the selection of a particular accounting method that will increase profits. So, ironically, if the management are paid more, paid bonuses, for example, through this, if you like, this second layer of contracts, which may not be formally agreed, it may be just custom and practice within the business. But if they are paid based on profitability of the business, they have an incentive to become even more efficient, to secure their bonuses. So it may be that the principal agent problem is to some extent self-correcting. If the agents now work harder so as to get their own bonuses, but in so doing increase the profitability of the business, which may actually increase the dividend payout for the shareholders. It's a possibility. The agency problem on how to induce the agent to act in the best interest of the principal. That is the core problem. How to get the agents to act in the best interest of the principal. The agents, the management, will work for themselves. They are self-interested. They will work because they want secure employment and they want high remuneration and a good working life experience. But that, as I said, eats into the profitability of the business and the amount that's available to be paid to the owners of the business, be paid to the shareholders. So that's the core of the problem. It results in agency costs, costs of monitoring the managers and disciplining the agent to prevent abuse. The shareholders have to institute monitoring to ensure that the company is accurately, openly and fairly reporting costs and profits so that they can monitor abuse should it happen. And if it does happen, not only have they got to monitor it, they've got to deal with it. And it's all agency costs. So agency costs, well, the sum of monitoring expenditure by the principal to limit the aberrant activities of the agent. So it means that the shareholders have to appoint perhaps the board of directors, and the board of directors have to monitor the accounts to see if there are any variations that are not right, if the management are concealing activities or unnecessarily investing in certain areas, or there are items of expenditure that are unnecessary. So they need to monitor it, and that's a cost. Bonding expenditure by the agent with the guarantee that certain actions of the agent will not harm the principal, or to ensure the principal is compensated if such actions occur. So it may be that the agents have to be spoken to and an agreement has to be struck with them that their actions will not harm the principal. But if the principal is hurt, that there will be some way of compensating the principal for such actions. So if profits are let's say, reduced in one time period because of the behavior of the management, then in the next time period they may agree to compensate, and in that way the problem is resolved. But these are all costs in monitoring that are, in a sense, unnecessary. But they're only necessary in the situation where we're dealing here with large organizations, very dispersed population of shareholders, and a very united group of managers with expert knowledge of the company. The residual loss arising from the divergent monetary costs arising from the agent's decisions, and those decisions that would maximize the welfare of the principal. Well, it could be that the management are forced, through monitoring and through the activities of the board of directors, to compensate the principal and look at what the principal would have received had the management not acted in the way it did. And in that way, some sort of resolution is brought about. But essentially, we're looking at organizations that are in conflict between the two groups. So we have the shareholders who empower the agents, and they have to trust the agents. The problem with this is that what we've got here in terms of our diagram makes it look very simple. The shareholders empower and trust the agents, and the agents are stewardship agents. They're looking after the assets of the business and the welfare of the business. And the agents protect and adequately reward the shareholders in terms of profits, stability and growth. So the shareholders benefit from having the agents in place. But then the problem is that the agents take resources out and, in a sense, give the resources back to themselves in the form of higher salaries, bonuses, company cars, expensive trips and business trips and palatial offices. And so that's the problem that needs to be monitored. It's the set of resources on the right hand side here that have come out from the agents have taken out of the system. They're not circulating them back to the shareholders, the owners of the business. They're taking them out and they're putting them back into their own activities. The agency model assumes that individuals have access to complete information. So the agency theory, as worked out in economics, suggests that individuals have complete information and that investors possess significant knowledge of whether or not governance activities conform to their preferences. So it's necessary that the shareholders understand that whatever governance activities, say the power of the board of directors in monitoring the management, if those conform to their preferences. It may be that the board of directors are themselves not working effectively to control the behavior of the management in terms of the resources the management are taking for their own purposes. So the investors possess significant knowledge. We have to assume that the investors know what's going on and whether or not the governance activities conform to their preferences. And we have to assume that the board of directors, has knowledge of the investors' preferences, because the board of directors is acting on behalf of the investors. So therefore it must know what the investors' preferences are. Otherwise, it will not satisfy the investors. If it doesn't know what their preferences are, then it can't effectively satisfy them. Now, sometimes this whole area of agency discussion seems extremely complex, but in fact we can reduce it down to some very simple ideas. We have two groups. We have the shareholders and we have the managers. They don't have the same set of preferences in terms of what they want from the organization. They don't see the organization from the same perspective. The management, as I said, want resources for their own purposes, for bonuses and nice offices and for expenditure on themselves. The more they take, the less is available for the shareholders. But the shareholders are the owners of the business. However, the shareholders are weak because there are so many of them and they're so separated out geographically and in terms of their interest or commitment to the organization. So what we need is some governance, some way of controlling the abuses that could happen on the management side. So we have a board of directors. So the board of directors try to monitor what's happening with the management. And sometimes the board of directors has to appease the management because the management have got expert knowledge of the business. So they have to, in a sense, have separate contracts, recognizing that the management will take bonuses and will take resources. What they need to do is to control the amount that they're taking. And all of it involves costs, agency costs. The agents, the managers, in other words, have to be monitored. That's a cost. They have to be checked. And the accuracy of their reporting has to be checked. And if they're abusing it, they have to be not just monitored, but they have to be perhaps dealt with. And that can be expensive because they have employment contracts. And for all of these reasons, it's still necessary to recognize the importance of corporate governance. It's still necessary to ensure that companies are run in the interest of the owners, because it's the owners who've invested in them and it's the owners who own the businesses. However, the businesses need to be dynamic and innovative and changing and efficient. That requires an efficient management. So, corporate governance is important. It ensures that there is a balance between the two sides and that they can work efficiently and effectively together. Well, that's all we're going to deal with in this session, so let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.